So the housing crisis is much different than it used to be. This isn't the 2008 housing crisis, okay? All right, let's go back in history. What led to the 2008 housing crisis? Well, several things did. One of it was a policy put in place by President Clinton, which was intended to do good. It was a policy that was put in place in the 90s to allow people from lower ranks in the socioeconomic ladder, per se, or as it were, I guess you could say, people that didn't normally qualify for credit to buy houses, or people that didn't have the means to buy a house, to have access to buying homes, right? So it started out with a good intention, which was we want to give people who normally won't have access to buy homes the ability to do so. But the problem is that it was very gray and very fuzzy in the wording, and so banks took advantage of that. And so instead of just allowing people that had bad credit, or didn't have credit, or didn't have the ability to buy homes normally, the ability to do so, it opened up the floodgates for a lot of other loopholes to be exploited. And that's what led to subprime mortgages, right? So all of a sudden, banks realized, well, we can use this same loophole to lend out homes to anybody under a certain amount of money, right? A certain amount of income with a backing, and the government will back us or something. But that just kept happening and happening and happening. And it got to a point where everybody was fucking qualifying, okay? They found loopholes for everybody. And no one put a stop to it early. It kept going, and then all of a sudden the housing market started booming. People were FOMOing in. They started buying houses. The bank was like, "Sure, we'll lend it out to you. We'll lend. Oh, you don't have a down payment. Oh, you don't have good credit. Oh, whatever. We'll just lend it to you. Lend it to you." And then they started realizing these people weren't paying it back, and then we know what happened from there. Led to a massive housing crash, right? Unfortunately, though, the rich only get richer, and so people who weren't able to afford a house now had to give up the house, but so many people did that the housing values dropped because there were so many on the market, and people couldn't get rid of them fast enough to get out from under being underwater, that people with money on hand that were waiting for this or just happened to have money were able to buy up a lot of properties cheap and make a bunch of money, right? Long TLDR. There's a lot more to it, but that's it. So let's talk about now. So we saw interest rates, right? Average mortgage interest rate was around 4%, give or take. It's a nice round number for aesthetics, okay? And housing, the rates were here, and housing prices were steadily going up. Normal, normal for what we have, not normal for, people that can't afford it. But there's this normal steady flow of houses being bought and sold, and real estate going up as it does always. Population increases, demand is there. Everything's going great, whatever. Then COVID happens, and we realize our GDP is about to fucking tank, okay? And so interest rates get dropped, right? Make money cheap. We need people to be able to borrow money, to be able to lend out money, to be able to expand businesses, to be able to buy things while they're out of work so that we can keep the economy going. So interest rates go down to basically 0.25%, okay? That plunges. Well, what happens? Average mortgage rate drops, right? Because the mortgage rate is tied to the federal funds rate in a lot of ways. And so the average mortgage rate goes from 4.1% or whatever it was down to like 2.9%. And that's when I was screaming at everybody, right? Like, refinance your home. If you have a home, refinance. I don't care if you just bought the home 2 months ago, refinance that shit. Because on a $300,000 house or $400,000 house, you're talking about $200,000 in savings over the lifetime of your loan, right? So a lot of people did that. Well, now what happens? All of a sudden, it's super cheap to buy a house. So everybody who owns a home refinances down and locks in that sub 3%. And people who didn't buy a house all of a sudden had cash for something else or had other investments or whatever, or money laying around. They took that and they threw it, and they bought these houses at 2.9%. Well, all of a sudden you have this huge flurry of people buying up houses. So as people are buying them, the sellers, people that wanted to sell, are selling them, and they're getting snatched up. They're getting snatched up. But now they're going by quick. So people start going, oh shit, I need to overbid this. I need to go to the bank and get a max amount of loan, and so I can overbid this. And so then a bidding war started. And now if everybody has extra, because remember, at 2.9%, let's say you priced in affording $300,000 loan at 4.1%, but you can now price in a $380,000 loan at 2.9. So now guess what? Same payment, more money. You can bid up those prices. You can outbid people if you really want the house. These rates aren't going to last long. You better lock it in. Oh shit, everybody's moving out of the cities into the suburbs because everybody's working from home now. Oh shit, I'm at home and actually have to deal with my wife and kids, or my husband and kids, or, well, I guess he's a kid too. And I need more space because this is driving me nuts. And so all of a sudden this huge flurry happened. And so what does that do? Supply and demand. Well, if I'm selling my house and I see other people out there are selling their houses for 20, 30, 50,000 over asking, I'm going to up my price too. And if my house sells at that price, that ups the comp set, the comparable sales around me. And so now prices of houses start going up. And now the Fed realizes that inflation is not transitory and they start raising the rates. And now we get to a point where prices are high and rates are high. Okay? So now what happens? Well, you have existing homes. People that refinance their home at sub 3% are not fucking selling their house now. Because if they sell their house now, they might be able to get more money for it, but they've got to turn around and buy another house that's super expensive at double the rate. Remember, it's better to buy a house that's cheaper with a higher rate than more expensive with a lower rate. I'm sorry, it's better to sell at that level. You want to, if you had to choose between the two, you want to buy a house that is low in price and higher in rate, rather than high price and low rate, because you can refinance out of a high rate. You can't refinance out of a high price. Okay? So they're not selling their houses. And buyers are sitting there like, well, either the price has to come down or the mortgage rate has to come down. One of the two. So we're going to wait. Well, if nobody's selling their house and nobody's buying any houses, you've got a stalemate. You've got a deadlock. Now, in some regions, there's still houses on the market. You can go to some of these major cities or some of the booms or whatever. But in the suburbs, in most places, you go on Zillow, sure, there's more now than there was last year, but they ain't selling like they were. Now, we did see 66% of mortgage-owned homes for sale on the market. The average price sold actually dropped by 1.7% last month. That's the first time in a decade that's happened. But that's a little blip on the radar. This is just natural ebbs and flows with this stalemate. And remember, 1/3 of all homes bought in the last 2 years were bought in cash. So those people are fine no matter what. So there's still a demand for houses. So what does that leave? Well, if these are pre-existing, I don't like to call it pre-owned, but pre-existing homes, what does that leave? I want to buy a house, but I don't want to overpay for a fucking old home. If I'm going to pay that much, I might as well just pay for a new construction. And so this is why we've been following it this year. I played Lenner on their earnings last week. I bought LC after their purchase of the land in Austin. New homes. And this is actually a fun little loophole that's going on right now. I actually talked to my barber last week. Well, not him, the guy that was next to him. When I was at my barber's, I was talking to a guy in the chair next to me. And we just got into talking about money somehow, and he ended up talking about looking to buy a house, and we had this conversation, and I was trying to get an insight from somebody who completely doesn't have cash and is financing a mortgage, just to ask him what his plans are. Like, I didn't tell him what I do for a living, but I got to do that. So we went to a friend's kid's birthday party, and there was a lot of people there that have money, and one of them was a divorce attorney, and he's worked with, Congress people and whatever. And I love to get inside information from people like that. Like, not inside, but like insight from those people. And he deals with divorces. And he was talking about how what's happening with the houses in these divorces, and especially with wealthy people in several houses, they're not selling off the houses. They're keeping them. It's a crazy story. But either way, you've got new homes. And there's two things. If I'm going to pay a lot of money for two homes, one of them's pre-existing, one's new, and the new home only cost me $35,000 more or 5% more, I'm going to take the new home. I don't have to bid over people. I don't have to do anything. But here's the catch. A lot of these companies offer financing, private financing. If you buy directly from them, they'll offer you private financing, which sometimes can be as much as 1% lower than the average mortgage rate. So you're telling me I'm only paying 5% more or 10% more for a new home and I'm getting a lower rate? Yep, D.R. Horton does for sure. A lot of them do. It's like going to, financing a new buy for anything big. And so what's happening is that everyone's waiting for this deadlock between buyers and sellers on pre-existing homes, but we don't know how long that's going to last. Because everybody's like, okay, the Fed's going to have to lower rates. So buyers are like, okay, I'll buy when the rate goes lower or when the price goes down. Or the sellers are like, I'm going to wait for rates to go down, sell my house, and then buy another house with the cash but at a lower rate than I'm currently getting right now because it's at 6% or something, and I refinance at 3%. So while that's happening, people that can afford to are saying, F this, I'm going to have to wait 2 years for this to happen anyways. It's going to take 2 years for this house to build. I might as well just fucking buy it now and finance it via the direct financing from the manufacturer. Part of the reason why I played Lenner last weekend, part of the reason why I bought LC this past week for a swing trade, but this morning was the fucking drop. The hat drop this morning. Housing start and building permits. Building permits. How many permits are applications go through? Basically, when they go and say, hey, listen, we need a permit to build this house. How many of those happen this month? Housing starts. How many of them went to the city and said, all right, we're breaking ground? Up 22% month over month. 22%. You might see building permits not start for 6 months. That's why even 1% gain in building permits can be huge, because it's adding to a pool of permits. But permits can be sitting there forever. I mean, there's people that have permits on the books for 5-10 years. They have to re-up them, but they're still there. Permits came in plus 5% today. That means not only are a lot of those older permits finally breaking ground, but more permits are getting pulled at the same time. Which means this is demand now, this is future demand. It's like, wait a second, we've got demand now, we got to break ground because people aren't waiting anymore. They want these houses built, or we see an opportunity, and we think that we're still going to see more of this in the future. So we'll increase the supply of houses? Well, eventually, if this trend continues, yes. But this is showing that the demand right now is insane. 22% in 1 month jump. Sure, 22% from a bottom is not as much as it seems like, you know, if this was 2007 or something. But 22%. Just because people do this does not make it a good idea. It just shows the desperation of people. I can almost guarantee you that most of the people that are doing this are not desperate. We don't know if this is rich people, if this is people that have extra cash, if this is corporations. Generally, desperate people are not out financing new home builds that take 2 years to build. Surprisingly, a lot of qualified borrowers out there. Oh, absolutely. That's tightening right now with a lot of these banks, and a lot of these lenders are starting to tighten up that credit. But this isn't 2007, though. However, the new 40-year mortgage is going to be an interesting one. This is the most commented TikTok I've ever had. And I explained why this is such a bad idea and such a trap. And I even explained in the video all the answers that I was probably going to get, or all the comments I was probably going to get that people don't understand it, and they still all repeated it. And everybody in those comments were like, well, it's better than renting for the rest of my life. I was like, actually, if I had to rent the rest of my life versus take a 40-year mortgage on a house, I'd probably rent the rest of my life, unless rent just kept going up. I said, but the one thing I got from everybody was like, this guy's so stupid. This is actually a better idea, because now I can stretch it out and I can throw extra payments at the principal every month, and it's like a 30-year anyways, but I don't have to pay as much. I was like, first of all, it doesn't make any fucking sense. Second of all, then just keep the fucking 30-year. And most of all, if you qualify for a 40-year, I guarantee you they're not offering you the ability to fucking pay down extra on your principal without penalty. Ain't no way. Ain't no way a bank's going to be like, yes, we're going to give you a 40-year loan, but allow you to make extra payments on your principal without penalty. We think you qualify for that. I have conversations with people on Discord sometimes when I have time, and we have a guy in here who had a rough time. He bought a house with his wife and then found out his wife was sleeping with somebody like 6 months after they closed on a house. Luckily for him, they didn't have kids yet, but she left the house and she won't take a buyout right now. And he doesn't know what to do. And here's the thing. They put 0 down. No, they put 5% down. It's a $489,000 house. And they have PMI at 6.1%. How stupid this decision was is a whole other conversation. But you have a 30-year mortgage at 6.1% with PMI, which doesn't fall off until you get 20% of the principal down. But at 6.1% making minimum payments, that could take you 5 years. What does PMI do? Oh, that's a good TikTok right there. The bank gonna get their motherfucking money. They're not just gonna lend you out money. The bank is a loan shark with a suit, okay? They're not just gonna give you money. The whole reason that you put 20% down on a home is that the bank has leverage. They have something. If you default on that mortgage, let's say you don't pay back the mortgage, they've made something guaranteed, and they can turn around and remortgage that house out to somebody. Because remember, I hate to tell you this. This is a sad fact that people don't want to hear. People don't want to hear this. Unless you have the deed to your house, you don't own a home. You rent it. The bank owns your home. You don't own your home. Call yourself a homeowner. It sounds good. It sounds great. You don't own that shit. The bank owns. You have the deed? Nope. You don't own that shit. When I paid off my grandparents' mortgage and gave them the deed, that was a good feeling because now it was theirs. You don't own your home. You rent it. You rent it from the bank. It's rent to own, but you're renting it. And then after you do own, you're still not free because that government's still getting theirs, ain't they? Try not paying that tax and insurance. Oh, by the way, you still got to pay the maintenance, but good old Uncle Sam still has a little piece of them pocket. Oh, you thought you owned it, did you, boy? No, you don't. You rent it from us now. So the bank says, you put 20% down. That's our money, okay? It goes to the principal, but that's our money. And that way, if you fall off and whatever, we remember, and that's why you front load and you front pay all the interest up. You pay all the interest up front. I bought my home for $300,000. It's worth $400,000. Okay. How long you owned it? 5 years. So since you paid almost all interest, you still owe $290,000, even though you've paid $60,000. So you're $50,000 in the hole. Well, that's actually not true. I actually no, you bought a house for $300,000, but you're gonna pay $722,000 for it, plus another about $1.1 million for your house by the time you get rid of it. There is no one in the world who buys a house, holds it to the end, and sells it for a profit. Okay, maybe there's one or two out of 1,000, but homes don't make you money. Unless you flip it, you pay it down early, or you rent it out. It's not. It's something you can borrow against. It's an asset, but it doesn't make you money. So, bank gets their 20%. Now they know that if you default and they reclaim the house, they get whatever you paid. That's why you pay your interest up front. You could literally pay on your house for 10 years, get foreclosed on, and never see a dime back. Because you're like, but what about all the money I paid into it? You paid the bank the interest. You never touched the principal. You still owe almost the same. So they get their money. They get their 20% guaranteed plus the interest up front. If you don't have the 20%, but you still somehow qualify, the bank will say, okay, we'll lend you, but we're going to be like a loan shark. Not only are you going to pay us that 6% compounding monthly, but you're going to pay us an additional 1 or 2% monthly on insurance. You're basically paying insurance on the collateral until we get that 20% from you. Oh, but by the way, that's an interest. So let's say your mortgage payment is $1,700 a month. Maybe only $250 is going to the principal. The rest of it's going to escrow and to interest. But let's tack on another $300 a month in interest. So now you're paying $2,000 a month in interest, and maybe $270 is going to the principal. Well, take your $400,000 loan and minus $270 from it. So now you're at $399,630. Or sorry, $730. That's how much you've taken off. You've paid $2,000 on your loan, but you're only $270 down on it. I haven't started with taxes, insurance, and maintenance yet. That's a whole other thing. I don't want to discourage people from being homeowners.